So like, how many samples do I need to export out my animations? Should I use the denoiser? How do I set up the denoiser? Why does my render still look like boo-boo after I export it? What are things that I can do to improve my render after I've rendered it? The next few tips I'm going to give you are really going to help you to improve your renders when you're doing animations. Now, one thing before we get into, I want to point out a quick little tip here. Now, if you notice the turrets, I actually animated them to kind of recoil like a cha-cha, to kind of recoil. In this render, I just realized they are not recoiling. And there's a thing that you really have to pay attention to when you're doing animation inside of Blender Octane. Okay, let me jump into Blender really quick to show you what I mean. Now, if I play the same animation here inside of Blender, you can see that we have the turrets. They're actually having some recoil on them. Look, cha, 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 they're firing back in. There's one thing that you need to take note of when you're doing animations where the mesh is deforming. You need to change the settings to let Octane know that it's doing some mesh deformer so it can update it in the render frame by frame. Otherwise, it does that on purpose to kind of, I guess, to help maximize render time. I'm not to be sure. If you come over here, so since I have the animation on this piece here, I'm going to come over here to my tab. And if you come up to here, right here where it says object, let me move that there for a moment. Let me kill that camera. Object type. And right now it's on scatter movable. What we want to switch it to is reshapeable. It says Octane reloads the full mesh and evaluates every frame. This is useful for deforming mesh types like fluid. I think I also could go to movable. Now I know like if you have like a character and they have like the character motion and stuff, you're definitely going to need to have it. Like if you brought in a Mixamo character with animation on it, you're definitely going to need to use reshapeable because I've done that before. So I know it's going to work on this one. So in this case, I'm just going to leave it on set onto that one. So don't be fooled. You will see it working here in the actual workspace, but in the render it won't work in the render. So if I jump back over to the render here, and you can clearly see the turret is not animating. Everything else is working. Like I didn't have to switch the turret here to movable or anything. It's just in default. So what I'm thinking is because I am using a shape key on this, I think that's why it's not triggering. So with the shape key on there, we're gonna have to probably use remeshable. And there's one other thing I kind of wanted to change when I do the render. Right now, if you look at it, I do have these lights here, these little bit of these beams here, okay? Now, I should have animated them. When they're inside, I should have the light animated off, and then when they come out, animated on. Because when you look at the render, you'll see here, I've got these little bit of see this little bit of pop here? If the light was animated off, you would not see that, okay? So just keep that to know, and it's actually a good practice to do that anyways. When your lights are not visible, animate them off because the render is still calculating these little lights. Even though the lights are not visible, it's still calculating that light. So by having it turned off, it's going to help improve my render times, help reduce noise, and a lot of other things like that. So just a little note, these are the mistakes that I'm making that I want you guys to avoid. So I'm teaching you guys that now. Let me quickly show you the settings. So my settings here on this animation here, make sure that these are both, look, I have two turrets here. Make sure they both are on the same thing, reshapeable. Okay, good. I do have motion blur turned on these here. If you come over to, we scroll up a little bit. My custom thing is different. So I do have motion blur. So I have motion blur checked on all, especially the turret and the turret head. And then especially on the projectiles that come firing out of it. You need to also turn motion blur on down here in your settings. Motion blur, I have it. I did crank it up a little bit. It's normally set to 20. I gave it to 40% just to give it a little bit more blur, kind of accentuate the blur a little bit. My render settings, I literally rendering out 100 samples at 8, 8, and 4. And then I have my GI clamp set to 10. I do have a noise denoiser turned on. A little bit of post-processing going on here with bloom and glow. Again, if I come up here, I'm rendering an ACES tone mapping, but this is just the viewport only. I'm not exporting out ACES in this case here. If I come up here to my, where is it? Oh, sorry, I skipped it. Denoiser. Here is the denoiser. Again, boom, those are my viewport settings for denoiser. Again, to get your denoiser pass set up, I come out here to my render passes. Make sure to turn this from beauty to denoise. So now I have the denoise. And I'm not really using Blender's Octane. I'm not using Blender Cycles exporter in this case, or output. I'm using Octane's output. And the way I'm doing that, if I scroll over to the output tab and I scroll here, here is what I'm exporting out of Blender Standard. I'm just doing an MPEG video because I don't want it to double up on EXR. So I'm just doing a video, okay? And then I'm saving that in its own folder. Then if I scroll down here I do have this checked, Octane output. And I have this unchecked, reuse the Blender output path. I don't want them to be saved in the same place as the video. So this has its own folder, and then everything else I kept the same. But what I did was change here. I changed export separate images to export multi EXRs. And the reason why I do that here, and get this back. Oh, see, yeah. Once you select the denoise, it already puts it in here. So if you want to output this and do a file output here, you can save it separately. But again, I'm bypassing all of this, and I'm just going to use the Octane output. And if I scroll down here down to the Octane output, here it is. Again, I'm selecting EXRs, and I'm using a multi-layer EXI. So it's going to store the beauty pass, and it's going to store the denoising pass in one file, okay? And then I'm going to come back over here, and then I'm using 16-bit float, and I'm doing linear sRGB. Again, if you want to keep the aces, this is where you have to come in here, switch here to aces, and this will be exactly what you were seeing in your viewport when you had aces checked, if you want to do that. In this case, it's not a really big deal. It's just kind of a playing around animation here. So I'm just keeping it in the linear default sRGB. Pretty much switch this to DWAA, which is a very good compression. It's even smaller than a PNG at times. So use this one here. So that's all I have. I export these out, and then I did a render. Now we're inside of Davinci Resolve. So what I'm going to do is come over here to Davinci Resolve into the media tab. Here is the folder with all my stuff. Again, it looks so dark because it's in linear sRGB, okay, because we're going to be working in a linear workflow. And there it is. So I'm going to go ahead and drag these EXRs into the timeline. I'm going to right click on here. I'm going to say create new timeline using clip. I'm going to go ahead and let me decheck this here. And I want to get into the settings here, and I want to use vertical. That's it there. Jump over to the timeline. Okay, so this is what we've got going here. That's looking great. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the Fusion tab. So now we're in the Fusion tab. I'm going to close my media tab. Mine might look a little different than yours because I like to work in a up and down motion, basically like what I've learned from Nuke. And then I'm going to go ahead and make this one viewer because we don't need to see two. What I'm going to do is come in here. I'm going to go shift space bar. I'm going to go color, and I want to do color space transform. Okay, I'm going to grab this, click on it, hold down shift till it turns blue, mouse over here. When it turns blue, release. Now it's connected. Make sure you connect those, okay? And then what I'm going to do is drag that. I want to see that in the viewport. Make sure that's color transform. We want to go from linear to sRGB. Just tab the S here. Scroll down to sRGB. Boom. There it is. Now we're seeing it. I'm going to come back over here and click on my top one here. And again, if you want to view this, you can press 1 or you can press 2. Right here's 1. Now it's viewing in 2. 1. I don't really care too much to use the little dots. You can click on the dots here. I prefer to just drag it over there and just drag it like that. Boom. It's easy. Again, we got multiple channels inside this EXR. I need to pull out my denoise pass here because right now we're not seeing the denoise pass. So I'm going to scroll back over here, and you'll see here it says channels. I'm going to click on the channel, and right now we're seeing the beauty. Right now, the R, the green, and the blue RGB. If I tab down here, you can see denoise beauty R. So I'm going to switch that to denoise beauty R and switch it all to green and switch it to blue. Okay, now we're seeing the denoised image here. So this is what we want to see here. One thing I like to do, right click on this area down here at the bottom and go and turn off high quality, and I turn off motion blur. This is going to help me with previewing because like right now, look at my playback. It's absolutely garbage, right? We don't really see too much. And it looks like I probably could have upped the samples a little bit more on the render because look at so much noise here. But you know what? It's happening so fast that like I didn't even realize it, but it's no issue. I'm going to re-render it anyways because I want the recoil to be in here. So I'll have to probably crank up the samples a little bit or maybe bring down this light source a little bit. We do have some nastiness going on there. But again, this wasn't planned to be a final render. So I'm going to go ahead and re-render that anyways. Okay, so now what we're going to do, of course, I don't have any good playback at the moment. So you could do this. You go to your media tab and then come in here and I'm going to right click and I'm going to say generate proxy media. Now, mine is set up differently. I've already set this up. So again, if you come down here to your tab and then you go all the way over here to, I think it was capture. No, it wasn't capture. Let's go to settings here. Optimize right here. Optimize media and render cache. This is where you can select. So here it is for proxy media format, I've already chose what I want it to be, and then I want the medium process to be at half resolutions. Okay, there's other videos on YouTube how to set this up, so I would definitely check that so you know exactly what you want as far as your settings go. But I've set this up for my laptop because it's a little bit older laptop, so what works good for me. So when I click on this now, if I right click on it and go not generate optimize, I want generate proxy media. Okay, and I'll let it go ahead and do this. So it's done with that. And then I'll come in here, tab again, and I want it to just go proxy. So now if we go ahead and hit play, boom, look at the playback's a lot more better than it was before, right? Okay. And then I think we can even get more better playback if I come up here to playback, and then I go to timeline resolution, and I bring this down to 1/4. And now if we hit play, pretty much full time. 60, you know, not 60 frames, but pretty much full time. Be careful, the quality is down, so don't stress on the quality. Excuse me. Okay. Now let's get to the fun stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and hit that media, blow that out. Then what I'm gonna do first thing is I like to add in some chromic. And what I do is I go to effects, and we go down to template, and then I'm gonna search bar, and then it's gonna go CH, and here it is, chromic aberration. Drag that on the top. Make sure you hold it over till it turns blue and yellow. Release. Now it's connected. I'm gonna close that effects tab there. Drag this up to the top. Then if I want to see the results, I just like to grab it, hold it, release it over here, right? But now obviously we're seeing it before the color transform, so I'm going to go back to here, right? Go ahead and tab on this, come over here, and we can crank it up. Look at that, there it is. Crank it down. You can go down or up, so either or. But whatever you want to do, just be easy on it, all right? Unless that's the look you're going for. I just want a little bit of distortion there, just ever so slightly. No, remember, this chromic aberration is not the star of the show. This turret is, right? This is just a supporting actor. Okay, now that I got that, I'm gonna add in a little bit of glow. Come in here, I'm just gonna type in glow, click right there on this glow here. I'm gonna hit add, and that adds it into the pipeline, as you can see there. And the same thing on the glow, come over to the settings, you can just shine threshold, there's everything. I'm gonna kind of crank it probably all the way down to here. I'm gonna go to spread, and matter of fact, you know what? I'm gonna go to a part where the beam is actually coming out. Let's kind of, ooh, right there, right? Let's get that, something right about there. Okay, now if we look at it and come back to spread, you can see we can totally isolate that, right? So I want it to kind of be blowing out the screen a little bit here. And if we come down here to gain, we can control how much of that we want, right? And again, if these lasers were in real life, they probably would be pretty bright coming out of there, right? And then let's kind of just scroll like good. Pew, 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 pew. That's sick, dude. Okay, cool. Now from here, we're going to add in some lens grunge. This is another little effect I've learned, and I've been using the hell out of it. I'm going to go into my media pool. I'm going to go ahead and import some lens dirt. I found this free lens dirt file here on the interweb. Just search Google, you might find it. I'm going to go ahead and drag that into the show. I'm going to go ahead and hide the media pool. So then I'm going to bring that over here. And I'm going to go ahead and grab this tail and release it onto the white box, and it's automatically going to merge it. There's our merge node. Make sure it's connected. Yep, there it is. And again, I like to keep a nice, clean, tidy node tree. And if we click on it here, click on the merge, it's huge, right? So we need to scroll this down here. I'm going to go to size and bring it down. And then I'm actually going to go to angle and go 90 degrees. Now let's go ahead and bring up the size. You can click here and drag also for finer control. I like that about there. I'm going to click on the merge. We're still on the merge. I'm going to go to apply type and set that to screen. And now it's just like completely blowing out and overtaking everything. So we're going to mask it. We're going to use the brightest parts of the actual turret image as a mask. So we come over here, shift space bar, add in a luma keyer. I'm just going to go LU. And actually, I probably could just go LKY. If you can see, here's the shortcut LKY. I'm going to take that. We didn't like whatever was going on. I'm going to hit OK. There's our luma keyer. And it's actually connected wrong. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect that and disconnect that. Grab this, plug it back down into here. And I'm going to take what the glow feed. I'm going to take, whoops. I'm going to take this feed that we're seeing here. And I'm going to pipe that into here. And then I'm going to take this and let's drag it over here so we can see what it's seeing. This is what it's seeing. A little bit of a faint blue here. So if we click on the luma keyer, then I scroll back over here. The mouse is dragging a little bit laggy here. And I'm going to go ahead and grab the low threshold and just crunch this value. And that's actually not really doing. Let's go to the high value. It's a little bit better. You know what? Let's actually go again back to where we have a laser a beam coming out. There we go. There we go. Now let's crutch it from here a little bit. Kind of like that. This is going to be the brightest part of the image, okay? So from here, I'm going to take this, click back on the Luma key. I'm going to go Shift Spacebar, and I'm going to go Blur. Just going to add in a blur node and then hit Apply. Okay, now on my blur node, I'm going to drag that over here so I can view this. And I'm going to crank up the blur and blur this out. Matter of fact, I might just crank it all the way to 100%. So that's what we're seeing coming out of this Luma keyer, the blur. We're seeing the fully image blurred. Now I'm going to take this and use this blur as a mask for our lens dirt. Plug that into there. Let's grab our output, drag it here. And now we don't really see anything happening. So what I'm going to do here, and then one other thing I do is I'm going to copy this color transform, copy this, click on this node, paste it, because again, this is sRGB and we're working in a linear workflow. So I want to take this and I want to go sRGB and I want to convert it to linear. Just press L. There it is, linear. Okay, because again, everything else is linear. We're converting this. We brought this in. It was an sRGB image. We want to convert it to linear to be in our pipeline, because then at the end, everything gets piped out from linear to sRGB. Okay, what we want to do is we're not seeing the effects. So I'm going to drag this over here, and then I'm going to add in a color correct node. And on this color correct node, we're going to go to the gain, and we're just going to crank up the gain, crank it up. I'm not really, okay, there it is. I'm seeing a little bit. Now we can see a little bit of the spottiness here. That's the lens effect. So if I come back actually to our merge node here quickly, and I'm just going to drag this up. This is basically, we're basically moving the lens dirt. There, look, there it is. That's what we're seeing. That's the effect of the lens dirt. Okay. So get it something kind of interesting, right? I like that. That's really cool. Now I have it cranked up all the way just so we can see it. Again, it's not the star of the show. The tour it is. This is just a supporting actor. So I'm going to go ahead and bring it down just so it's visible, but not so much, like about there. Because what's nice is this is animating off of the scene. So right now we see it, it's bright, but then it goes away. We don't see it because there's no highlights. The highlights are literally the mask. Look, phew, now we can see it right there. Phew, let's go back. Phew, we can see the highlights. We can see the lens dirt. Because that's what would happen in real life. Like the brightness of it will literally expose the dirt that's on the front of the lens if there was anything. If it was a movie, it'll be completely clean. But, you know, this is an artistic thing going on here. It's just a little render, right? That looks cool. Look at that. I love it. That looks dope. Okay, sweet. So let me do a little bit of house cleaning on my nodes here because I like to do that. I like to keep these straight. That was our Luma keyer coming in. We blurred it. Then we piped it back into the mask of our lens dirt here, and now we're coming back out. Now what we can do, what I'm going to do is, this is where you would come in and also maybe add in like some, what is it, film grain or some grain. See if we got any grain here. Grain, grab this grain node and then drag that in here. Okay, now we just want to grunge up our image, right? And grain size, I would bring this way down, you know, and then even like the power of it, just bring it, we just want it very subtle, something like that, right? Depending on the look that you're going for. In this case, for me, I'm not going to do that because I'm going to use my Dehancer plugin. I'm a big fan of Dehancer and I love it. So again, if you guys are interested in the Dehancer plugin, I will have a link down in the description. So what I'm going to do, now this is where we come into our color grading, right? So in my color tab, my first node is right here. What I'm going to do is just kind of just beef up our image. I'm going to kind of bring down the darks, kind of crush the image a little bit, then bring up the highs a little bit. Mids, I'll probably bring it down. I want something a little bit more moody. Then I'm going to grab my contrast, crank up the contrast a little bit. Pivot, I like to just play with the pivot. This either pivot towards the top or towards the bottom. And I'm like, maybe like something like that. And then what I can do is come in here. I'm going to press Alt S, is going to give me another noodle. And then I'm going to jump into this tab here, into my log wheels. And then again, I can just bring down just the darks from here. You can see you don't want to go too much in clipping it down past this. I'm looking at the monitor here. You don't want to go below, like have the blues crushed down there, right? So I'm just going to kind of pull this down just a little bit, really accentuating that darkness. And then I'm going to go to the highs, the highlights, and just kind of get those highlights to pop out a little bit. And it's going a little bit off of the scale there, just a little bit. So boom. Then I'm going to come over here again and press Alt S one more time. And this one, I'm going to add my Dehancer plugin to it. And then if I go over to my search here and just type in DEH, there it is, Dehancer. And now what I'm going to do on this, I'm not going to use it for any of its film looks. I'm going to use it just literally for its grain. I'm going to go ahead and turn off this here, even though I do like that already, the way that's coming out, but I'm going to turn that off. And I'm just going to come in down here to film grain. And I'm probably going to give this maybe a 16 millimeter film grain at an ISO of 500, something a little bit gritty. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on halation. I don't think I'm going to use that. Bloom, I could turn on a little bit of bloom. Yeah, why not, huh? I'm going to go to bloom, but I'm actually probably going to use a 65 millimeter, 70 millimeter bloom, something like that. Film damage, why not? Let's turn it on, okay? A little bit of film damage on that. And I think that's pretty much it. Vignette, I could throw a little vignetting on it. Let's take the feather, turn off the feather so we can see what I look. And size here, there is the size, something right around there. And then the aspect ratio, since we're going vertical, I can kind of make this and tweak it for like a vertical more look, like something like that. And then just come in here and feather that edge like that. And there it is. It's very subtle. Don't want too much. And I think that's pretty much all I would do to this whole thing. And then you got, let's back it up a little bit here and see what it's looking like once the beams are firing off. There, it's not too bad. And again, it's looking a little bit noisy. Oh, that's right. Don't forget we are looking at it and the playback is at the lowest. We're using a proxy, and we also have the timeline resolution set down to 1/4. So if we go ahead and turn that back up to high, that's what it's looking like a little bit. And again, I need to crank up the samples in this also. So I will re-render this again tonight. I do all my rendering at night, so I don't have to bog up my computer during the day, so I can get the recoil of these, because I really want that to be playing